This show is sponsored by the law firm of Tony Kalagarakis and Associates.
Sometimes we never get a chance to meet our clients. Wrongful death is not easy for the family. At the Injury Lawyers of Illinois, we focus on what we do best, car and truck accidents. We're very selective with the cases we take on. We understand and approach every case as if it's the only case in the office. We spend so much time on a given file that we relate to that particular client. The ultimate goal is to make the client whole, is to put that client in the same position as they were prior to the accident ever happening. A client has to understand where their case stands. We speak their language. We have individuals in our firm that are fluent in 8 different languages. The client is aware with regards to what's going on in their case at every level. A lot of people out there don't realize that the big insurance companies are not primarily focused on their treatment, their health. We are. After all, it's the client's interests that we have in mind. We know how to start a case, and we know how to end a case with a successful resolution. We have the resources, we have the knowledge, we're local. We've handled thousands of cases regarding car and truck accidents. That's what we do. My name is Tony Kalagarakis, and I'm the managing attorney at the Injury Lawyers of Illinois.
شلام عليكم. أنا ريبيكا سايمون. مجيبت يوداعت شاميران قابلوكم مشينا. أرخن أمان أوديو إيلخا ومانا ريشايا بشمت سكوت كريستيان سافا. سكوت إيلخا سيارة يرشانت شكلي كتابت كتابت يالسوري وزرزانت فيلمي. فيلمو بشمت Animal Crackers بتباش مغزية جابت نتفليكس برخت دايرخة سكوت بيش لبرية خايمة آتوريتا وخابابة إيطاليانا. إنا سبب سوراي ليلة بدايا أخنا همزنتم دويا بلشانة إنجلس. Hello, my name is Rebecca Simon. On behalf of Shamiram Media, I welcome all of you. Our guest today is a renowned artist, Scott Christian Sava. Scott is an illustrator, a painter, an author of children's books, and a movie maker. His movie, Animal Crackers, will be airing on Netflix. Scott was born in 1968 in Yonkers, New York, to an Assyrian mother and a Sicilian father. He's the older of 2 children. He is currently living with his wife and their 2 17-year-old twin boys in Franklin, Tennessee. Hello, Scott. Welcome to Shamiram Media's program. We really thank you that you have been able to talk to us today.
Hi, Rebecca. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
And I love the background. You're sitting in your office. It's such a beautifully decorated and worked on. I guess you built it yourself. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Scott,
it's a magical place to work.
I bet it could serve as an inspiration. It's inspiring to me. Scott, tell us about your maternal grandparents who migrated from Urmi, Iran to the United States in the early part of 1900s.
Yeah, my grandfather was Eramia Caram, and my grandmother was Judith Caram. And they were fleeing the genocide in the Ottoman army. and they came to Yonkers in 1918, and I'm assuming they met somewhere between 1918 and 1927 because that's when they got married in Yonkers. They had 3 children: Alfred, Raymond, and my mom, Vivian, and they were very active in the Assyrian community, and for as long as I could remember, they've always welcomed fellow Assyrians. They've sponsored other Assyrians from around the world to get into America. It was their life. It was everything to them, and it was it was how I remember them.
Scott, you come from a family of artists. Tell us the number of artists in various fields that you have in your family.
Yeah, the most influential to me were my uncle Dave, who was my grandmother's brother, Dave Yonan. Our whole family has pastel illustrations, pastel paintings of the family that he did. He was just a tremendous artist and photographer, and a real bohemian back in the day. And then there was my
Unusual for
uncle.
that time.
Yeah. Very artsy. I guess they loved dance. And my uncle Ray, my mother's brother, was a famous illustrator in I would say the 60s and 70s and 80s. He was a member of the Society of Illustrators in New York, and he did the 1984 Olympic calendar, I believe. He also did a lot of work for Ralph Lauren and Avon. And I remember when I would go in my teens out to New York in the summers, I would get to stay with my cousins, and I would just love to spend my time in his studio and just soak it all in and just learn about all of that. And of course, my mother also went to art school as well, and she was a fashion illustrator. And I wish she would have pursued it a little more, but she always mentored me, and she and my father were both extremely supportive of me becoming an artist, and encouraged me to pursue it.
When did you find out that you had a knack for drawing?
I think my earliest drawings were around five years old. I think I was drawing Spider-Man, which was my first love, was Spider-Man, and it was shortly after that I think I was given a sketchbook, and so I have several sketches of Evel Knievel and Mean Joe Green and some of my toys, my Micronauts and whatnot, and I think as I look back from the hundreds of sketchbooks that I've done over the years, it's a bit of a time capsule for me. It's like my own personal journal of what I was interested in, and I could see my style progress over the years.
So you kept all your sketches?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think last year I decided that I was. It's overwhelming to have 100 sketchbooks to go through. So I went through and made like a scrapbook of just a timeline of the most important moments from 5 years old to 50 years old, and just so that way I could look through it and kind of soak it all in a snapshot, because otherwise it gets a little overwhelming. But yeah, I've been drawing every day for 50 years, so there's a lot of drawings.
Now, looking at a 5-year-old sketch that you've done, sketches that you've done, now you're a professional illustrator, painter. Looking at those 5-year-olds' sketches, do you see that they were very advanced at that time?
I've never been very good at drawing out of my head, and you can see that throughout my career and throughout since I was 5 years old. But whenever I would see something, I could copy it almost perfectly, even at an early age. And so when I look at the sketchbooks, I see the times where I'm trying to draw from what's in my head, and then I see when I have a picture in front of me. And even back then it was very advanced. I don't know exactly how it works, but if I see something, I can copy it. As long as I can look at it, I can copy it almost exactly.
You have an eye for proportions and a hand to draw
Yeah.
it. Scott, what kind of a child were you?
Oh man, I was hyperactive, and but I was also a bit withdrawn. Just like I would assume I kept that part, the hyperactive part. I don't think I think I've channeled that, but as a kid, I was always outside. I wanted to play with my friends, but I would then have my quiet time where I would sit and I would sketch, and I think that stayed with me for most of my life.
So you finish high school, and what did you decide to do? You knew always that you were going to be an artist, and there were no other options for you?
Yeah, there was no other options for me. I wasn't very good in school, so and I got through a lot of my classes in high school by doing artwork for the teachers. So it was definitely what I was doing. I was definitely going to art school. It was my passion, and I think knowing that. Probably my junior and senior year in high school were geared mostly towards just my art studies and what I was going to do after high school.
Were you praised at school, saying, "Oh, you're going to be somebody someday"? Were you a good art student?
Yeah, I mean, I was a good art student, I think my senior year I was voted most artistic or something. But I've always kind of stayed to myself, stayed in the shadow. I was never very popular. I was never very active in any of the events. So I didn't really draw the attention of the school. I didn't really draw the attention of the teachers. I'm not that type of personality. I'm at least, especially as a high school student, I was pretty forgettable. But by the time after 4 years of being in a school, I was doing the student comics. I was doing photography for the journalism. I was doing a lot of art. So my art got around a bit. I think I even won scholarship from one of the local banks. And so people knew about it, but I doubt anybody would remember me.
They do now, or they will on July 26th. Scott, you finish art school now. What did you do after that?
Well, while I was still in art school at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, my junior year, my father recommended that I take an internship at Sega of America. They were looking for interns to work in 16-bit games. And I didn't have any experience with computers at all, but I took a chance and I applied and I got the job. So when I graduated, I had some experience working in video games, and it was a good place to use art and get a steady income, which if you ask my uncles is a very hard thing to do. And so this was a very good way for me to make a living right out of college and still be creating art. And so I got into video games. I worked at a couple of local game companies, and being in Silicon Valley was a perfect place. And I eventually took a job at Atari Games being a game designer. And that was a blast. It was a great place for someone who's 22, 23 years old.
Now, at that time, were the video games kind of wild like they are now, or they were a little more suited for children?
Yeah, they were pretty tame. This was 1991, 1992. I was working in arcade games. I was working in Sega and Nintendo games, were all kid friendly stuff. So fortunately, I was working on some fun stuff that the whole family could enjoy, and it suited me. It suited me very well.
Oh, those good old days. I wish we could go back to those good
Yeah,
old days when things were a lot more innocent, especially for our kids. Now,
yeah,
you mentioned that your love, as far as professionally, was Spider-Man. You loved
yeah,
Spider-Man. Tell us what happened as far as being a
yeah,
Spider-Man illustrator.
yeah. So since those first drawings from when I was 4 or 5, um, I loved Spider-Man. It was my thing as a kid, and so all through high school, uh, I was constantly pursuing comic books. I was constantly pursuing that dream of doing the Spider-Man comic book, being the artist on those comic books. And so ever since I was about 17 and I could go to my first comic book convention, I would go to those conventions and bring my portfolio, show my work, and try to get a job at Marvel Comics making those Spider-Man comics. And I eventually got into college. I eventually got into the video games, and I was working in games. And every year I would still go and try to get that job, and I would get rejected every year. We moved to Los Angeles in 94, 95, and I would still pursue it and pursue it and pursue it. And it wasn't until I was, I think, 32, I finally got the call, and
And
I got the
you were
job.
already a father by then?
No, no, no. We were married about 9 years, my wife and I, at that point, and this was around 2000. It was around 2000, 2001, and this was. I don't want to say it was an obsession, but it was. I was going to keep pursuing it till I died, and it happened. It finally happened. I finally got the call, and it took a year to produce the issues that I did, and after that, there was this big weight that came off of me, and I think it was at that point that my wife and I said, "Okay, I got that out of my system. Now we can have kids." And I think, within months she was pregnant with twins, and and I was able to move on. It was a good thing for me. It was a good thing for us because we got to really pursue our passions for those 10 years and to really just be a couple and to really focus on ourselves and our careers. And then once we had the kids were our focus. And for the last 17 years, that's been our main focus.
So one might say the birth of your career in Spider-Man caused the birth of your twin sons.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Does any of your sons, have any of your sons inherited your artistic abilities?
Technically, both of them do. Both of them showed great writing and illustration potential at a young age, but only one of them, we'll say when puberty hit, only one of them really pursued it a little more, and that was my son Logan, who really pursued drawing. We like to go together with our sketchbooks, and we'll go sit somewhere and draw together. He also will help me. We've made a couple of music videos. We've written screenplays together, and he's also a stage manager in high school and was in junior high as well. And he's just got a real great eye, and he's got a real creative mind. So I think one of them's pursued it, the other one hasn't. And no, Brendan, I'm not disappointed with you. I love you just the same.
Of course, he has his own abilities and gifts, I'm certain. Does your son Logan have a style already established? Can you see that?
He does. Yeah. I mean, he does really good with pen and ink, and he does a lot of cross-hatching, and he's really kind of learning his own way. I don't think he's pursuing it by his age in high school. I had been taking art classes for years. He still hasn't taken an art class. He draws a lot, and he journals. but he's not pursuing it in the way that I did. Back when I was, for me, it was lessons. It was taking art classes. It was learning painting, learning acrylics and oils and gouache and watercolors, and learning photography, and just learning all of that stuff, going to art school. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to take it in a little bit more of an organic way and pursue his own direction.
Now, you've written a number of children's books. How many have you written?
I think about 12 or 13 of them, all for my kids. And, they range from stories about robots to giants and elves and dwarves to aliens and pirates, and anything that the kids were interested in at the time, I would throw that in there, and animal crackers, of course. So I've written just about everything.
So your daily interactions with your kids inspired you to write those books?
Yeah. I mean, I would see them reading books about dinosaurs or playing with their dinosaurs and be inspired to write something for them. And I would include them, ask them questions. I would interview them. If we would see something like a Pirates of the Caribbean, I would write something about pirates. If we would, in the case of animal crackers, if we would be eating animal crackers in the backyard, and I came up with an idea of turning into a lion when you eat a lion cookie, then that became a book. So it was really just, they were my inspiration. They were my muse. And I just took that and gave it back to them as books for them to read.
Is your wife also an artist?
I don't think you can live with an artist and not pick up some artistic traits. And so she definitely, she has wonderful handwriting and she does wonderful journals. But her passion is really, right now, the kids, and before that was marketing and PR was what she went to school for at San Jose State. But she's the other half of our company. She's the other half of Blue Dream Studios. So where I'm the person with my head in the clouds, I'm the person who's dreaming up fun ideas and, maybe we could try this and maybe we could try that. She's handling the business side. She's handling the accounting. She's handling the marketing. She's handling the day-to-day. She's making sure that everything runs, that everybody gets paid, that the travel plans are working. And so I don't, as artists, we dream about being married to another artist and just making art all of the time. But I don't think that is feasible to run a professional business. And my wife is grounded. My wife is logical, and she's careful, and she's conservative, and she's everything that I'm not. And so she's the other half. She's what you need to make that whole and to make it work.
The balance. She creates the balance in your family life. Now, you eat a box of crackers with your kids, and then boom, what happens?
An idea, a spark, and it was a fun idea, and I'm sure other people have had the same idea. You eat a cookie, you become that animal. So you eat a lion cookie, poof, you become that lion. You eat a giraffe cookie, poof, you become a giraffe. And the kids loved it, and we played around that day. And I think it was maybe a few months later, I sat down, and the idea kind of gelled in my head a little bit more. And the idea of putting in a circus, I think, came to mind. And that's where the story really came together. And so I wrote a book for my boys about a little boy and his sister who go to the circus with their uncle, and they use the animal crackers to rescue the animals from the circus. And my son Brendan loves animals. He volunteers at the zoo, and having something to do where you're saving animals and rescuing animals, and they have feelings, and they need to be protected, was really something important to him, even at a younger age. And so that was really special to me and really important to me. And it just became something more. I turned it into a screenplay, and then it became a movie.
How old were your kids when you wrote the book?
I think they were around 7 or 8 at the time.
So
So this was
it's been about 10 years that you wrote the book.
10 or 11 years, and so yeah, it has been a while. I think it was 2008 or 2009. So
Did you
I
ever
keep losing
ask
track of time.
Did you ever ask them about their ideas, what direction the book should go? Did they have any input in that book?
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes they. I have a series called The Dreamland Chronicles, which is a very long, drawn out fantasy, um, where they were very involved. When my son was studying about Native Americans, we made the centaurs interact with the Native Americans. Then he was into ancient Egypt and pharaohs, and so we had those characters in the story. So over the years, because that series took me 13 years to make, over the years as they became interested in the Epic of Gilgamesh or anything else, it wound its way into the story, and they were my editors. They would come and they would read it, and they would give me their notes. But then there was other stories like Animal Crackers or Pet Robots or My Grandparents Are Secret Agents, where I think they just wanted to be surprised. They wanted to read it with new eyes, so they didn't want to know the story as it was going. They knew the concept of what I was doing. They wanted to read it for the first time when they could hold it in their hands.
Now, Scott, you said you've written about 14 children's books.
Yeah.
Out of 14, why the Animal Crackers made it into a movie? What was special about Animal Crackers?
I don't think there was anything more special about Animal Crackers that the others didn't have so much as everything in Hollywood is timing. Originally, we were talking to Harvey Weinstein. This was around 2013. Yeah, around 2013. And we were originally pitching Ed's Terrestrials, which was an alien movie, kind of like E.T. These aliens come to Earth and they land in this boy's treehouse. And at the time, Harvey had already finished a movie called Escape from Planet Earth. And he said, I don't need another alien movie. What else do you have? And so it was just one of those, you pick something out of the pile. And he really liked the concept of Animal Crackers. And so we went with that. So it's just random. It's just sometimes luck, or it's just where the market is at the time.
So what happened with the deal with Harvey Weinstein?
Fortunately, it didn't go through. What happened was he loved the script, he loved the team, and he wanted to meet me in Valencia, Spain. And I'd never been, and that was where our studio was going to be, and that's where we were going to make the movie. And I had to borrow money from family to fly out there. And I flew all the way. It was 20 hours of travel time. I flew out there and I got there and he never showed up. And I mean, it's annoying, when you go to meet someone for lunch and they don't show up. It's horrific when you fly across the world. And, when we got back.
On borrowed money.
On borrowed money, yeah. On top of that, yeah. But we got the contract from him. And it was essentially he would own it all and we would get nothing. And as desperate as we were to see this happen, as desperate as we were to make a movie, we weren't just going to give it up right there and then. And so we decided to say no.
Well, it's on the record now. Christian Sava said no to Harvey Weinstein.
Yes.
Now, how does one meet Harvey Weinstein in the first place?
It was, and I think you'll kind of pick up on this for pretty much my entire life, as it was blind luck. But a friend of a friend knew a guy whose brother was the CFO of the Weinstein Company, and he lived here in Franklin, Tennessee. And so it was just, of all places, he lives, maybe a mile or two from us, and he was the one who put it in front of his brother, who put it in front of Harvey. And yeah, it was just, it's crazy. You just wouldn't think here in Franklin, Tennessee, that there would be somebody who would be, 1 degree away from that, but
I got an inkling that it's not all blind luck, because you've had too many blind lucks. And when you add all the blind lucks together, it becomes, I made it. Now, you said no to Harvey Weinstein. Now you move on. Where do you go next? What happens?
Well, being an artist and living in Tennessee, I did not have really any resources. So you call on friends, you call on family. Donna went back to work to buy us the time to allow us to pursue this. And so she went to work while I was making phone calls. And you ask friends and family, do you know anybody? Do you know where I can go? What do you think? It was a friend of mine that I made. I met him in 1992, I think it was, back at Atari Games, and he was a stuntman and producer, and he was Sylvester Stallone's stuntman in Rambo, stunt double in Rambo, and his name was Harry Mock, and he was just dogged about finding money. He says, I'm going to find you that money. And he traveled to all of the shows on his own dime for 2 years. He went everywhere, just looking and looking and looking for money. And one day he was in Los Angeles at the American Film Market, and he met a sales agent from Australia named Michael Favell. And Michael knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew two guys who knew a woman who knew another woman who knew a guy who knew a woman who could put in the money from China. And so there was, 13 degrees of separation between me and the actual investor, but somehow magically it all worked out. And within a year we had our funding. And I've never made a movie before. I've never directed. I've never written a screenplay. And some woman in China had $10 million that she felt she could trust a complete stranger in Franklin, Tennessee with. And
was she an artist herself or an investor?
No, with the language barrier, I really didn't get to know too much about her. Add to the fact that there were so many people in between us. No one wanted to be left out for fear that they would not get their credit or any kind of money or whatever they were owed. So everybody wanted to feel functional. So every conversation was like playing a game of telephone. I would tell Harry, Harry would tell Michael, Michael would tell this person, that person. So, and then the language barrier.
I hope the message wasn't lost at the end when it got to the Chinese lady.
I honestly don't know. All I know is she's happy. She, at the end of the day, she got her money back, and the movie was very well received in China. But it is very difficult working with somebody that you can't have those conversations with, especially when it's something as important as an investment of $10 million. You want to be able to have those conversations and in some way heartfelt gratitude for their trust. And I don't know if that was ever relayed. As many times as I know I've typed it or have said it to a translator, I don't know if it was ever properly relayed to her how much I appreciated her faith in me.
Now, $10 million in today's filmmaking world is not a whole lot of money.
No, it's nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's not. compared to a Disney movie, which when we started this in 2014, there was only 4 studios making animated movies. You had Disney, Sony, DreamWorks, and Universal. Were the only ones making animated movies, and their average budgets were between $100 to $180 million. So yeah, $10 million was not going to cut it. And we had no intention to compete with any of those studios. We were thinking this would be maybe a direct-to-DVD movie. It's my first one. I didn't have high hopes. I just wanted to have the experience. And as an artist, you learn that every painting that you do, every endeavor that you do is a learning experience. You do it, you learn from it, you move on to the next one. And that's when I look at my sketches from when I was 4 to the sketches to when I'm 51, it's because of all of those attempts that I'm so much better. And so this was supposed to be my first movie, so that way hopefully by the time I get to my 3rd or 4th movie, I'm much better. But we weren't intending it to compete with the big studios at all.
So you got your funding. You went ahead and made the movie with that $10 million? Did you finish with $10 million?
No. Something really strange happened. When we went for the cast, any casting agent is going to ask you what would be your dream cast, and they just want to know what kind of voices were in your head when you were writing. And 2 names were in my head when I was writing. It was Patrick Warburton for the voice of Brock, and Sir Ian McKellen, who plays Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, as the voice of Horatio P. Huntington. And within a month or 2, we got a call from Ian McKellen's agent saying that he'd like to be in the movie. We explained that we didn't have the budget for such a big name, and he was willing to work for a lower rate. And we thought, okay, well, maybe we can make this work. Maybe we can somehow keep this in the budget that we wanted to. But once Ian McKellen had signed on, Sylvester Stallone wanted to be in it. Danny DeVito wanted to be in it. Raven Simone wanted to be in it. We did get Patrick Warburton. We got Harvey Fierstein. We got Gilbert Gottfried. We got Wallace Shawn. It just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And we looked at each other and we said, we have 2 choices now. And we told the investor, again, through translators, we can either tell them no, or we could try to get some more investors. And the Chinese investor agreed that it was worth the risk. And so she took a smaller share so we could go off and we can go find more investors. And we wound up raising an additional $9 million. We almost doubled the budget to accommodate.
From the Chinese investors?
No, we had to go to other investors. The Chinese threw in another 3. We got $1 million from Korea, and then we got another $5 million from a fisherman in Seattle, of all places. And so we used a portion of that for the cast, but we used probably 3/4 of the rest of that money for the quality. We really, really wanted to up the quality of the film to match the wonderful cast. And we feel it was worth it. We still were working at $19 million. It's still, in a lot of cases, 1/10 of a budget of a Pixar movie. But for us, it was everything we needed to get the movie done. And from there on, we had 3 years of just creative bliss. Everything that we wanted to do, we were able to do. And we're really proud of it.
Well, I've looked at the trailer of Animal Crackers, and it doesn't look any less than Spielberg's Pixar's movie. So you've done
Thank you.
very well with only 10% of their budget. So now you got additional funding. What happens next?
Well, we still were missing the 2 leads, Owen and Zoe, and my casting agent said, well, I have a name I want to run by you, I think he'd be perfect. John Krasinski. And I said, I have no idea who that is. I'd never watched The Office, and this was 2014, so he wasn't a big star at the time. But he was such a good casting agent that I trusted him, and I remember flying out to Los Angeles and meeting him and Danny DeVito and Raven Simone, and he was just the nicest guy. And one day he was telling me, he says, my wife just absolutely loves your script. And I thanked him. Please thank your wife for me. That's very nice. And that was it. Because I didn't know who he was married to, because I didn't know who he really was. And fortunately, we were in the sound booth, and the casting agent heard it and came running in and said, "Would your wife want to be in the movie?" And I was confused. I was like, why are you asking this man's wife if he wants to be in the movie? And John just said, sure, and picks up his phone. He texts his wife, and his wife says, hey, babe, you want to be in the movie? And his wife responds, yeah. And that's how Emily Blunt became Zoe in the movie. And the two of them,
blind luck, right?
Another blind luck. Yeah, again, I had nothing to do with this, but
You were there, Scott. By you being there, you created that luck. Give yourself some credit.
Well, the two of them were so amazing together that we wound up having to redo all of the storyboards because they were so creative and they were having so much fun and they were making each other laugh. And it was so natural that they were in love and they were just happy together. And they had just had a baby daughter. So they knew they had that maternal instinct at that point too, because Owen and Zoe in the movie have a daughter as well. And so it was really magical to watch them just bring everything up to another level that we could have never done otherwise. And so, our cast was complete and the movie went on, and like I said, it was just magical from that point on.
And then what happens? That's when the true story, the real story is. Yeah.
Well, we finished the movie at the end of 2016, and we signed on with a studio that offered us a lot of money. And we found out shortly after that they were going bankrupt and that the offer was fake. And we were heartsick, and I pleaded to the owner of the studio, just to his humanity, to please give us our film back. And said, no, I'm not going to do it. So we tried the legal route, didn't work. We never even got far enough. We were going to lose all of our money just in legal fees. So we had to pay an extortion fee. And so we got the film. We paid the person off, got the film back, and signed on with another smaller studio that offered us a lot of money. And 6 months later, that company went under. So now my investors are getting really nervous. And we signed on with a third studio, and they just sat on the film for 14 months. It just sat there. And
why?
I think it was the inability. What it is if you remember, I was saying there was only 4 studios that put out animated films. They spend $100 to $180 million making the film. They'll spend another $150 million marketing these films. And the theaters demand a lot of marketing money to be spent. They won't put the film out in their theaters if people won't come to it, and people won't come to it unless they know about it. And so there's an old process of you spend a lot of money to get people to come into the theaters, and then the movie makes a lot of money, but you have to first make back. The theaters keep 50% of the money. So if the movie makes $100 million in the theaters, the studios only see 50 of it. But if they spent $50 million marketing it, there's no profit. And so for my investors, they were looking for, well, we put in $19 million. We want to get our $19 million back. So for us to go to a big studio and for them to go and spend $50 million to market the film, the movie would have to make $300-400 million in the theaters for my investors to ever see their money back. And it's a very difficult thing. So I think when we were dealing with smaller studios, the ones that were going bankrupt, or this last one that held on to it, they made promises that they couldn't keep. And so those 14 months were probably spent with that studio head trying to raise money that he just couldn't come up with. And so 14 months later, the beginning of 2019, we got the rights back. And by that point, Netflix had really started to come in into their own, and they really started to become a studio, something that was respectable and acceptable. And it was about 6 months later that Disney Plus came out, and then suddenly Netflix needed more animation, and our film kind of really jumped to the top of that list, where we were the, I don't want to say the holy grail, but we were the nicest looking with the cast that we had and the quality of the film that we had and the story. We were the right choice, and Netflix was the right choice for us too.
The good thing out of all this is that no one ever told you this is not a good movie. Everybody believed in your movie. It's just that bad luck happened with some smaller studios going under and things of this nature.
Yeah, I think I in this case, I don't credit it to bad luck so much as greed. I think the studio saw that it was a good movie. They knew it was a good movie, and they wanted it, but they were making promises to us that their checkbooks couldn't cover. And so we were taking deals based on what would get my investors paid back. And so these studio executives, seeing that this was a big movie, made promises and then tried to fulfill the promise by trying to raise the money, and they just didn't have that ability. But it was greed. I think all of the bad stuff that happened to us, in hindsight, looking back, none of it was bad luck. All of it was people seeing that it was a good movie and wanting to capitalize on it, at the expense of me and my family and my investors and everybody who put the work into it. And that's really the most heartbreaking thing is, we got to see the best in people making the movie, and we got to see the worst in people in the distribution. And so there's been the highest highs and the lowest lows, but I don't factor luck into the bad stuff. I got to see the wheels turning in these people's heads and really see what was really behind it.
What were some of the lows that you and your family, your wife Donna, your kids experienced during this 6 or 7 years of ordeal of making this movie that was legally yours? I mean, rightfully yours. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's my creation. The lows were the distribution. That was the lows for us. There's the legal battles. There was contentious investors who wanted their money sooner, who sued us. There was some bad stuff in that, but honestly, and this is the life of an artist. An artist will put out their work, whether it's a book or a piece of art or a movie or a song, and they'll get 100 positive reviews and one bad review, and they will focus on that one bad review. It will eat at them. And I feel the same way about the bad stuff that happened. We had 3 years of creative bliss. We had 3 years of autonomy, of being able to do anything we wanted to, and working with some amazing actors and talent and musicians. And then we had 3 years of greed and bad things happen to us. But when we look back, I don't want to let those greedy people overshadow all of the good and overshadow all of the wonderful things that happened and the accomplishment that we made by finishing this film by ourselves. And so I try to look at it as it was 10% of the entirety of the film. And so I try not to focus too much on it. I try not to pinpoint too much on it. It was bad stuff. But everything has its ups and downs. Everything has its goods and its bads. And, I'd really like Animal Crackers to be something that I always look back on fondly and look back on with joy, because it was a blessing. It was a really, really wonderful experience, and it was a huge accomplishment for a husband and wife in Franklin, Tennessee, to make a movie. And so I don't want to let the greedy investors and the greedy Hollywood types win by having that taint my story. It happened, it's done, move on.
What matters is that at the end you prevailed, your good story made it, people will watch it. And as I understand, speaking with you, it's an innocent movie. It's a movie that a family can gather together in their living room, family rooms, watch it, knowing their kids will enjoy it, and there's not darkness.
Yeah. I mean, it's based on a book I wrote for my then 7-year-old sons. There's nothing dark about it. It is a family movie. The entire family. It echoes Donna and my life together. Our 27 years of marriage. It echoes that partnership. Owen and Zoe are equals. Owen and Zoe are partners, and they both tackle the complications and the challenges in their own way, and they don't always agree. And so in the movie, they go their own separate ways in attacking a problem in the way that they feel is best for the family. But they always love each other. They don't argue in a bad way, but it's very realistic in that way. And I hope that comes across to people who watch it. For when the parents watch it, I hope they see that aspect of it.
And through it all, probably, I haven't seen the entire movie, but speaking with you, at the end, they love each other. There is love, even though there are disagreements and things happening.
Meet Owen and Zoe. Day after day, they wake up and go through the same old routine.
I'm eating dog biscuits for a job. Your dad has me eating dog biscuits.
Kinda.
Biscuits for dogs.
They both work too hard.
Hey, sweetie, I have a board meeting in a couple of minutes. Can you just grab Mackenzie from daycare?
Yeah, sure thing, honey.
They need a change. And I've got just the thing. Surprise! You are now the proud owners of one rundown, worn-out circus.
This is what we always wanted.
Keep this box close. It's yours now. The secret to the circus is inside.
Old animal crackers? They're probably gross, right?
They're gross.
Ah! I'm a hamster! Holy moly, holy moly, holy moly, holy moly.
Daddy's cute.
Thank you, Angel.
How would you like to be human again?
How do these things work?
It's magic.
I don't believe
They hate it. They didn't come here to see acrobats. They didn't come here to see clowns.
animals.
I'm not a performer.
Animals, Daddy, animals.
I'm supposed to land in that?
Yeah.
That looks like a fishbowl.
Take it easy, horsey.
Oh.
Left, left, left. I mean right. My right. Ah! They say a circus is a lot like a family, but every family needs that special something that holds it all together.
Fantastic!
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Oh
Check out these specs. Look at him go. Look at him go.
How is it that he gets paid
Look
more
at
than
him
me?
go.
I don't know, honey.
Does it bother you when I'm this
Your breath is not great.
Yes.
This is too close.
What did you learn, the lessons learned from making this movie and the long and painful journey that you and your family went through making this movie happen? What are the lessons that you learned?
How much time do you have? There's a lot of lessons I learned. I mean,
The lessons that you will apply on your next movie.
Oh, on the next one, yeah. Well, I learned that I guess the first thing is pay myself. That was the thing I did not do. I had this mentality of the captain goes down with the ship, and yeah. So I next one, I promised my wife I will pay myself first. So there's that. The artist never thinks about money, and I should have listened to my wife, and I should have taken a paycheck. But that will be lesson number one. Lesson number two is I love working with my family and friends. It was magical. It was fun. You can trust them, and we loved. My wife plays the fat lady. My son Brendan plays Owen at 12 years old. We had cousins that I hadn't seen in years playing characters. We brought in family. My cousins Rich and Lisa and their son Cam came in, and it was so fun. They got to play in the crowd, and so I think that is something to where you share it with your family. You share these experiences. So I definitely want to do that. And I think one more would be to just take more time to appreciate the moments. Not that I didn't do it, but I really want to. When I would go to Spain, I was so nervous for travel. I was so uneasy. I don't travel very well. When I would go to Spain, I felt that the whole time I was there, I just wanted to go back home. And I didn't give my team in Spain my full attention and my full love and support. And so I think I'd like to try to be better with that, and to take a little more time to sit and sketch. I loved just spending time. I can really focus more when I have a sketchbook in my hand and really just kind of be in the moment. And then later on, I could go back and look, and it brings me back to that point. So I want to do more sketches this time too.
Now, when you're sketching the characters in your movie, are they based on an actual person, or you just see the features and the character in your head and put them on the paper?
Well, actually, in this instance, the original characters were designed by the artist who did the book. I wrote it, and I had hired an artist named Allison Acton who wrote the book, or who illustrated the book for me.
Oh, so you didn't illustrate it yourself?
No, I didn't. We actually hired Carter Goodrich, who designed the characters for Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Brave, Despicable Me, Coco, so many of the Pixar movies that he did. I don't want to say we stole their best character designer, but he took a little sabbatical and came and worked on our film. And that's why I think our film has such a Disney Pixar feel to it, was because the person who creates the characters for Pixar created the characters for us. And he's just an amazing artist. And that's the thing about making movies, is it's not a one-person thing. It's not a one-person job. You work with 120 people, and as an artist, you have to let that go. You have to let these jobs go to people who are way more qualified than you. And my job is to, I wrote the screenplay, and I directed it, but I also had a co-writer, Dean Laurie, and I had a co-director, Tony Bancroft, and I had an art director, but I also art directed. And everything is having support because you can't do everything, and everybody is so much more talented in that specific field than you are. And I think you learn to. My job was to be the heart of the film. My job was to make sure that the soul of the film remained constant and was there. And so whether it would be in the art or in the writing or directing the actors, I had to keep everybody on that path. And so, you as an artist, you're so used to doing everything yourself, and that was something that took a little bit to do, was to let go and to trust your team and to trust everybody.
And did you do any illustrations yourself?
I did. One of the things that I had always wanted to do was a movie poster, and so I got to do the movie poster for the film. And at the time, this was 2014. At the time, I was working primarily with watercolors, and so watercolors is not a very good medium for movie posters. So I taught myself. I spent a year teaching myself how to paint in gouache, which is a much thicker paint. And so I literally taught myself a new medium and technique so that I could make a movie poster. And it was really fun. It's always a joy for me to see that poster up there. And
no blind luck. You made it happen.
That was a bit of
right?
hard work.
A year.
Yeah,
It took a year for one poster.
Yeah.
Not a blind luck, my dear. Now, who worked on the music for Animal Crackers?
Oh, I was born in '68. I was a child of the '80s when it came to music. And when I was asked who I would like to be in to give us music, at the top of the list was Huey Lewis. Huey Lewis in the News was someone that my wife and I both grew up with, living in the Bay Area. Huey Lewis was really big then, and it had his music had that Americana type of vibe that we were really looking for in the film. And I was really surprised because within, I think, a week or two, I was on the phone with Huey, and he was just the nicest guy. He wrote us a song, and it is amazing. And then the rest of the list, we got Howard Jones, was another '80s icon. That his music was always so positive and always so reassuring, that I that I wanted to get him and his music into our film again, to reinforce the heart and the soul of the film. Another group was Toad the Wet Sprocket, a '90s group that I've always loved. And then we got music from Queen, which was amazing. And then Michael Bublé gave us a song as well. And so, and I got to meet everybody. I haven't had a chance to meet Brian May and Roger Taylor from Queen yet, but I'm working on it. And but everybody else was really nice. They would come to Nashville. They would meet with my wife and I, and we've actually become friends. And it's been, the musicians are a completely different animal to the actors. The actors are wonderful, but this is their job. So they came in and you give them the lines, you give them your direction, and they perform their job. The musicians are completely different. They're given like a plot point or an emotion that you're looking for, and then they go off and they create a song from nothing. And it really connected with me, artist to artist. I look at a blank page or a canvas, and I create something from nothing. And the musicians do the same thing. And I think they felt the same way too, because they were so interested in the creative process of the movie. They were so interested in talking art and talking creation with me. And it really became a good friendship because of that.
Scott, your movie will be airing on Netflix on July 26th. That's in about
July 24th.
24th, sorry, pardon me on that. It's going to be aired around how many countries in the world?
Oh, I think it's 200 countries and like 160 languages, 200 million subscribers around the world.
When you made the contract with Netflix and you found out they're taking your movie, how did you feel?
Well, it was bittersweet, honestly. We were thrilled that the film was finally coming out, but due to some of the bad stuff with the investor, it wasn't really the happy ending that we were looking for. But Netflix has been really cool, and they've been very supportive. And we couldn't have found a better home, especially in a global pandemic right now. I mean, none of the theaters are open, and our film is coming out in the summer to 200 million subscribers, and it's. I hate to sound in any way that I am happy about the current situation with the world. It just was. We were very fortunate that it wasn't a theatrical release, because all of the theatrical releases have had to been postponed indefinitely.
Yeah, it worked out. Well, Scott, like the great movies, for instance, Gone with the Wind, Titanic, they have stories behind the scene that are as interesting as the movie making and your story. And I'm sure you've only told us, due to time constraints, a fraction of what's happened in your life trying to make this movie. And it took you years of hardship and ups and downs, and we're very happy that you made it. And you said you're a dreamer, as I am a dreamer. And my dream has always been that someday someone around the world will make a movie about Assyrians. Just a story about Assyrians using Assyrian names, and just a way of telling everybody we're here. So I am hoping that you will someday consider making a movie about Assyrians and Assyrian family. We're funny, we're hyper energetic, and we have like extreme characteristics about us. We're emotional, Middle Eastern emotional. So that is my dream. And what are you working on next, actively?
Well, first of all, I love your dream. And if we could get enough Assyrians interested in your dream, I would love to do something like that. I tend to write stories that are magical, and there's a lot of magic in Assyrian heritage. And I like fantastical things, and Assyrians are fantastical. So I would love to do something along those lines. So if you guys want to see that happen, let's do that, because we have the means of doing that. We could bring it to the world.
What do you need from Assyrians in order to make it happen?
Well, the two things that were the hardest were raising the money and the distribution. But I would never go and do a crowdfunding or anything like that. And I think people have a hard enough time surviving now. So I would never ask people to put in their money. With Animal Crackers, I would say, hey, if you have Netflix, please watch it. But that's as far as I would ever go to ask anybody for something like that. Assyrians are generally prideful, and we don't want to ask for anything. But those are the two hardest things. So if anybody knows of investors who want to make movies, we have, and I've met quite a few very talented Assyrian filmmakers who, with the right backing, we could create a whole genre of Assyrian films: romantic comedies, science fiction, gangster movies. Anything that we wanted to do, we could do. We could tell fantasy. We could tell real life stories. We could do documentaries. In my case, it would be animation. That's really my wheelhouse. It's really my specialty. But I think to bring stories of Assyrians and all that they bring to the world to younger audiences in animation would be amazing. But as you saw, what I've had to go through just in this film, it takes commitment. It does take family. I mean, I couldn't have made this film without my family and without people believing in me. But that is what needs to happen. That's the honest truth about that. Is it does take money, and it does take a community to make that happen. We would have to have a community of people who would be willing to help us research and to make sure that everything is to representative of the Assyrian culture to the best that we could do.
Well, you and I on Shamiram Media program expressed our dreams and our aspirations to do an Assyrian artwork, movie, book. And Assyrians of modern age are nothing like the Assyrians of your grandparents' era when they fled genocides and discrimination in the early 1900s. And they are much more affluent. They've made successful businesses. They are artists in every field. So our cries to them to help us out, make an artistic genius work happen if they can. And so with that, Scott Christian Sava, I really thank you for coming on to Shamiram Media's program and talking to us. You are an inspiration. We are proud of you. And our best to Donna and the boys. And we're looking for more from you. Go watch Animal Crackers on Netflix on July 24th. Get your popcorns ready and let's go watch an Assyrian movie. Thank you very much, Scott. My best to you.
Thank you.